Rightio, welcome to another edition of Racing World. Two things I think that we need to cover off, well maybe three in this edition, and that is F1, IndyCar at Phoenix obviously, and the state of WIC and what's happening with that championship. So let's start with the first cab off the rank, the one closest to home, and that's Formula 1 in Melbourne. What do we take of the first Formula 1 Grand Prix of the year? I think it was pretty good, really. I really do. I think it was pretty good. There's a lot that needs to still be adapted to, but we got a decent race out of it, lots of passing. Yes, the formula creates an artificial way of doing that at times. Doesn't matter, it's still a race. It's the same for everyone. Best person wins. In this case, it was George Russell. I thought the reliability from the cars was good. Every team had at least one car finish, other than Aston Martin, but they're a special case anyway, shall we say. But they completed laps. They did more laps than they thought they were going to, and I'm sure they're going to get on top of this vibration issue that's causing so much discomfort for the drivers. Alonso and Lance Stroll both saying that they were getting numb in their hands from hanging onto the steering wheel due to the vibration. Honda are no slugs. They'll get around that, so let's just tick that box as a work in progress, but I expect even change by the time we get to China. The big things I think out of the weekend was Kimi Antonelli and his accident in FP3. A little bit of an unforced error. He didn't really need to be going that quick in FP3, but he did. And the bottom line is he hit the wall. Bottom line is that the mechanics from the Mercedes team repaired that car and it was back out on the grid in a matter of hours for qualifying. That is impressive. Other impressive things I thought in the race, as much as people are talking about it and whether or not Ferrari made the right call, what we see now is a resurgence in Ferrari, but the big ticket item there is we're seeing a very, very happy Lewis Hamilton. And we haven't seen that in a couple of years. The last year at Mercedes and then the first year at Ferrari was a very downbeat Lewis Hamilton. And we're seeing the spring in his step. And I think that's great. And I think for everyone else on the grid, that spells trouble because Ferrari are on a bit of a roll. There's an upward trajectory there. Lewis is there. Leclerc's there. It'll be very interesting just to see how it plays out this weekend in China because completely different type of track, just everything, the way in which energy is going to be harvested at this track as opposed to Melbourne, which was regarded as a tough track for doing it. Just a lot of factors. So let's reserve all judgment on Formula 1 until next week after China, and then we'll get really stuck in, that's for sure. Other big kudos, just before we leave F1 alone, has to go to Cadillac. They got one car home, the other car was there, but what a performance in terms of from nothing to that. So congratulations, Cadillac, and I'm sure there's more to come there. Right, on to the next subject, back to the US and the Phoenix, jewel in the desert, I guess you'd call it. So I visited Phoenix quite a few years ago now for what was the last IndyCar race there, and it was a night race, and I thoroughly loved it. But as you've probably got the hint already, I love night races, especially on the oval. They just look amazing. You see so much coming off the cars and all sorts of things. But anyway, this was a day race, but it was a double header with NASCAR. IndyCar on the Saturday, NASCAR on the Sunday. Mixed rubber across the track, a lot of talk about that. I don't know. Goodyear rubber versus Firestone rubber. At the end of the day, the track rubbered up. Sensational crowd. Now that's a good thing. Was it an IndyCar crowd or was it a NASCAR crowd? That we don't know yet. But the big part about it was there was a crowd. So both disciplines got, if you like, exposed to a crowd, and that's fantastic. Don't forget, IndyCar had a great crowd at St. Petersburg, and let's see what happens this week in Arlington in Texas for the first event there. More on that in just a second. So overall, I thought it was a great race. Of course, it was the first time for Mick Schumacher to be on an oval, qualified sensationally well, and we had the chance to get something from him straight after qualifying.
The thoughts were really just about what I had to do. The sequencing, the different setups on the steering that I had to do going through the laps, and yeah, I think other than that, there's not much I can do at that point. So it was really just about putting everything on the line, trying to maximize what we have, the package that we have. I think we did that. Obviously, there's still a little bit in there, and I guess going out there as first is maybe not always easy. In this case, we didn't have a reference beforehand. But maybe that was also not too bad because we just had to go and do whatever we knew from previously. So overall, I think, yeah, as a team, we did a great effort there. Now it's on to onto some of the highline practice and FP2s and get everything ready for the race, which I'm no doubt it's going to be tough. So yeah, excited about going racing and excited about starting a bit further forwards.
Great performance there from Mick. I never really thought that we'd see something like that. The disadvantage of running early, there was a lot of things almost going against that run, and yet he popped a great time and ahead of a lot of very notable people, including Scott Dixon. So great performance. The next thing that went into my mind was he going to carry it through into the race, but we'll get to that in a second. But the other thing that happened there was Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing backed it up with Graham Rahal as well, also on the second row of the grid for the start of this race. And for Graham, this is just a massive thing that they've been searching for such a long time.
Not to get too excited, because it's like we pushed so hard to be in this position for WEX, for Envy, for Drop Life, for Fifth Third, for United Round, for all of our partners to, like, you know, just to have this moment. Obviously it's just qualifying, it's not the race. The race tomorrow, it's going to be really important. We're on our game. We got good race cars. But no, I mean, just the performance in qualifying, exceptional. And Mick just did a wonderful job. I'm super proud and super happy for him. And, Louis will get him up there. So I don't know. I'm just, to start third is a bit of a shock for me, but we'll take it.
Rahals are putting a lot of key personnel around this team this year, not only because of Mick Schumacher, but all the other things, the rebuilding of the team. Obviously, they've got the new race shop still. Looks like we'll have that fourth entry for the Indy 500 out of Rahals, which of course will be Sato, who gels very well with the team. There's the ingredients for something special coming, but I was very, very impressed by Mick Schumacher's performance. Never been on an oval like this before, never been in that situation for qualifying on an oval like that before, and then to have Graham Rahal do that as well was pretty phenomenal. Front row, of course, Newgarden was there, and David Malukas taking out his first pole, but first up, we got to actually catch up with Josef at the press conference. So here's what he had to say.
Big day, Big Dave, Little Dave, actually.
Yeah.
He's got to win a race right before his Big Dave, I think is the rule. It's his rule. I think he came up with it.
You're not making it up.
I'm not making it up.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good day. Good day for the team. I think we're all top 5, right, is where we landed. So, a lot of speed in our cars. We felt good at the test. A little different than the test, to be honest. It was very cold. Conditions when we were testing here was pretty cold this morning. So really qualifying was the first time we'd seen the track with any relative temperature. So I think that's why you saw some people moving up and down relative to where you would have expected them to qualify. You saw drop off more so in lap 2 than we'd seen for the last session or during the test. I think we got it relatively right. On our car specifically, we were a little bit behind coming through practice 1. I just did not have a smooth practice 1. So it was kind of a follow-up from St. Pete in some ways, where our cadence was just not what we wanted coming right into the weekend. And I think that made us second guess a couple things that we were going to do in qualifying. Now that I did it in hindsight, I wish we could have reverted back to our original plan. But sometimes you react to certain things and you don't get it perfect. And I felt like, we did a good job. We just didn't get it perfect. But at the end of the day, all of us being in the top 5 is a great starting spot for this race and something we can work with.
There's one thing that you can tell with Josef Newgarden these days. When he's happy, you get that type of reaction. And when he's down, you get the negative reaction that we saw a little bit in St. Pete. So this was a very upbeat Josef Newgarden. But you must remember that the Penske short oval program has dominated most of the short ovals in the last few years. So was it a surprise? No, not really, I don't think. And to have Newgarden there, probably more the surprise was to see Malukas there. Malukas taking out his very first ever NTT INDYCAR pole position. We'll hear from him in just a minute. But I think the thing is, it still takes quite a bit to get around the fact that that car doesn't have willpower in it. Every time I look at it, I go, willpower, and it's not. And of course, Will had another tough qualifying, another tough weekend with the Andretti team, and things just not quite coming together. But this is what IndyCar racing's all about. And of course, a new pole sitter, David Malukas.
Yeah, it feels good. We had so many close moments. I think, that was the story of last season with qualifying, at least on these ovals, where we're provisionally sitting in that pole spot because of the championship order, so it'd be 13th, and then right at the end, right at the death, we'd get dropped down a second or third, whatever it may be. So I already knew this time though that lap it was a pretty sporty lap. It was pretty good, and it seemed that the track actually went in our favor, and it started to get worse. So already had our confidence pretty high, and yeah, it feels so good to finally get it here. And yeah, all we needed was just a really good crew. So big thank you to Team Penske.
One thing to take out a pole position, but it's another thing to do it for Team Penske. So the buying question to him really was he feeling more pressure because he's now a Team Penske driver, and the expectation to do that, as opposed to when you're in some of the lower cars or the smaller teams down the grid, where the expectation is more just get the thing in the show. And when you're with Penske, it's get the thing in the show and get it at the front of the field. So the thing for Malukas that we asked really was, is he feeling pressure as a result of all of this?
No matter what team I've been with and throughout these years in IndyCar, I've always had a form of pressure to deal with, and I think for Team Penske it's a special pressure, and it's one that I'm very excited to deal with. You know, for me, Team Penske's always been my dream, and you know, I'm going into a car that had a legacy. You know, the Verizon number 12 car. It's, I mean, throughout all these years, the history, and obviously Will Power. I mean, what a incredible name, and I grew up watching him on the TV, so it's there's definitely pressure there, and like I said, no matter where you're at, you always have a form of pressure, but I think in this one, it's one that I'm excited to deal with, one that I feel like I'm going to thrive in, and just being at Team Penske, that environment, I've been with many different teams, and it's very special.
Onwards then to the race, and well, it was a pretty good race really. We had a yellow early on. Dixon went off strategy early on. I thought it was quite a smart move, and it could have played back into his hands. Kind of just didn't quite. It did bring him up the field, but not that much further from where he really initially started. The three New Zealanders, McLaughlin, Armstrong and Dixon, all finishing inside the top 10, which was good. It's about points, and that's what this thing's about. Collect those points while you can. A new winner in Newgarden. We were going to have press conference footage for you in this show. There was a bit of an upload error with the press conference, unfortunately, on the IndyCar side, not our side, just making that quite clear. And unfortunately, we don't have that. We did get a chance to talk to Mick Schumacher after the race, so here's what Mick had to say.
First oval done. Obviously, tough race for us today. Nonetheless, lots to learn, lots to take away, lots to understand still on our side. Obviously, we had a couple issues here and there in pit stops, but also in the race itself at restarts. So overall, I think we can be happy with it. You know, qualifying went well yesterday, and you know, at least something of the weekend went well. So now we can understand why the race maybe didn't go quite our way, and then hopefully do it better for next time.
Mick, I think, learnt a lot in that race, and sure, he didn't finish where he started, but it didn't matter. He finished and he kept his nose out of trouble all day, and I think that's a good thing. That's a big learning experience. Completely different type of race this weekend, back on the streets when they hit Arlington for the very first time. The rest of the race, well, there was lots of moments in there. You know, Christian Rasmussen driving an ultra-aggressive race at times, but this has become his benchmark, if you like, around these short ovals. We saw that at Milwaukee last year when he took his first win, and we saw more of it again, and he's not afraid to rub up against the wall. Proof of that is that we saw that there was the tyre scuffed quite a few times. There were a few people that played into things. Probably disappointments for me at times was probably Pato O'Ward. Didn't really fire that much over the weekend, and didn't really fire that much in St. Pete. But again, he's collecting points, and at the moment, that's probably more than what Will Power is doing. So, you know, the season's young yet. This run of races so tightly bunched together at the beginning of the season, we've never had before. So this is a very big thing. And don't forget, Indy's only a month and a half or so away now, so it's getting, you know, to that time of the year. But there's a lot of races to go before then. We've got Arlington, we've got Barber, we've got Long Beach, we've got Indy GP. You know, so there's a lot of things still to cover, and a variance in the tracks as well. But the big thing here is that it's week-on-week racing. Teams turn it around again this week in Arlington on a new track that no one has driven on before, rumoured to be ultra-fast, and we're going to find out pretty darn quickly about that. We'll be across it all weekend. We may even do 2 shows, just depending on how much content we can source from there. It's just proving to be a little bit difficult at the moment, but we'll get on top of that. But I think it's going to be a great race, you know, and again, I think IndyCar's in a good position right now. Reasons I'm also saying that, 2 pieces of information out today. First of all, you're going to the Indy 500 today, this year. This came out this morning. The car park and camping is full already for race day. Now, this is nearly 2 months before the race, and the car park and campground on race day, IndyCar or Indianapolis Motor Speedway put out this morning saying sold out. Now, we had a sold-out race last year. We had a sold-out race for the 100th. We're well on target for a sold-out race this year, which of course breaks the TV scenario in the state of Indiana where people can watch it. But more importantly, this is year on year. So whilst there's a lot of potential struggles financially for people around the world and with sporting events and that sort of thing, we're seeing this big spike coming, and it's called the Indy 500. So that'll be very interesting. The other thing out this morning, the first track map of the Washington DC race. It looks pretty impressive. It's going to have some amazing backdrops behind it, that's for sure, racing past the Capitol building and things like that. But the track layout is out now. It's not a bad track. It's not a fantastic track, but it's not a bad track. A bit hard to tell off a diagram, of course. I've never driven those streets, so I've got absolutely no idea. But it's happening. It's gaining more and more momentum. Obviously, it went from rumour to happening to now track plan. It's in full swing. So it's definitely going to happen. In this rendition of the track map, it does show quite a few things. Looks like it'll be very fast as well. And as we've said, phenomenal backdrop. So one can only wait and see what happens, can't they? So summing it all up, the other thing that happened this week, WIC. Cancelling their first round, which would have been a Middle East round. They've made the decision now that that event is not going to happen. I honestly can't see the Bahrain and Saudi Arabia races for Formula One happening either, because I don't think that this issue in the Middle East is going to clear itself up that quickly. The FIA have said, or Formula One have said, that they won't substitute those races, which will make for the most longest gap outside of the summer break that we see in the Formula One calendar. And that will be very interesting because the cars are on this massive development curve right now, and it's going to halt everything because you're going to lose 2 races where you're testing stuff. So time will tell. Well, as I said, the campground's sold out already. Tickets are selling fast for the Indy 500. All we can hope for is that there's going to be great weather. Last year's race, one of the coldest in the history of the 500, and I can tell you from standing out on the grid before the race, it was cold. It was really cold. And I've had the almost second hottest race in the history of the 500 there as well. And that was hot, but I kind of like something maybe in the middle, and it certainly helps when it's a warmer atmosphere for the fans, that's for sure. So let's hope we're in for good weather come the month of May. Look forward to that. As I've said before, we'll be in Indianapolis for that. Looking forward to catching up with a few of you there as well. We've already talked about that, and we'll nail that down closer to the time. We'll also be in Detroit. Very much looking forward to that as well. So there's a lot of great things ahead. Sorry for the abbreviated show this week. We just had trouble with our connection with things that we were getting from the press conference. But we'll have that sorted by this week, and we'll have another show for you, or maybe 2 shows out of Arlington. Until then, thank you once again so much for liking the show, sharing the show, subscribing to the show, commenting about the show, and we'll look forward to seeing you in a week's time here on Racing World.